used to speaking to like crowds of 20 or so at the Seymour Center and like interpreting without microphones. So I, as you heard earlier, I'm used to kind of projecting if I need to, but we'll see how this works. Anyway, thanks for having me here. I'm going to talk some about Sunday Assembly, but I hadn't been to one until this month. I just have been in lots of different sort of secular or at least humanistic congregations, and so that's part of my interest in Sunday Assembly, and why, kind of questions like, how can you be part of a bigger group and energize people and captivate without sort of trying to like treat them as a captive audience? Or how can you like unite towards a bigger cause without sort of losing the individuality, the things you care about? So, but I think having community and doing things like this is really, really important. And how can we, look at what the possibilities are and make that happen. So there are plans for a Sunday Assembly Santa Cruz. So how many people know what Sunday Assembly is already? Okay, I'll talk some more about Sunday Assembly, but it's sort of a secular, somewhere in the atheistic to non-theistic space of, let's get together and do things. And sometimes it gets called an atheist church, and whether that's a good term or not depends on your point of view and really kind of how it's heard. And Kishka Blues Bureau is the main organizer, and she's like, that's how I found out about it. She was like organizing some potlucks and stuff, and I'm trying to help with information and my experiences and doing this. She's traveling to the international Sunday Assembly meeting in, I guess, Glasgow, somewhere in Scotland, and so she couldn't be here to talk about it herself. But if you look up Sunday Assembly Santa Cruz, you would be getting in touch with Kishka. And so things I want to be discussing, I'm not going to tell you lots about it because you can look up things on the internet, and it's kind of just to get you started. Like if you are going to have a group that people you care about and you meet with on a regular basis, skeptics, Santa Cruz Skeptics is kind of like that, but maybe it's not all just what be the different activities you'd have? Like, sometimes it's good to meet for drinks, but not everybody wants to go out for drinks. So all the different things you could do and have a viable community. So I am somebody who's been a scientist since before I was a scientist. Like I cared about science. I work in genomics, DNA sequence analysis and stuff, but originally I was a computer scientist. But I had kids, and that became kind of important. Like not just how do you live sort of a science and evidence-based life and philosophically based life, but how do you teach your kids things and have them not just think that that's weird and having all this different attitude that nobody else does. So can you find a community that is not just about you? And so I've tried lots of things, and this is sort of the spectrum that I've come up with just trying to prepare this talk. And you can have kind of sort of groups that sort of exist on their own and aren't really part of a larger, harmonious community that sort of, meta community that sort of follows the same things. And when I moved to Santa Cruz, I tried to be part of this. There's John Rawls had a thing called Secular Santa Cruz. We'd meet every Sunday, and it was great, but it took a lot of energy to meet every Sunday. And when John got burnt out, and I tried to keep doing every Sunday, it didn't work. And I'm not that great an organizer all by myself. So it was something that it felt like it was a great thing, but it was hard to how to keep it going and how to have the institutional how to keep it going. Anyway, so standalone things can be really hard. And like as Susan was talking about CFI supporting skeptic groups or SkeptiCamps and stuff, that's huge. And sort of you can go to conferences, you can find other like-minded people, and not just we have our little thing. And so you can be empowered somewhat like that. So that's sort of one spectrum. You're atomic or standalone, or you can be sort of federated. You have some sort of denominational or some sort of larger organization that can help support and have conferences. And on the vertical, you can have things that are really atheist, like we're just, God is like evil and we're going to like be against religion. Or you can be, sorry about this, I need to like go to the upper corner here. Anyway, that'll keep it from going to sleep. So American Humanist Association, these are some on the upper right are things that are organizations that are pretty much anti-religion, or at least pushing back really hard against a lot of things that come from religion. They maybe don't care so much about people who have very philosophical religions, but there's a lot of religious stuff that's going on that's not that way. And then you have some things that I think almost would call non-theists. They aren't really addressing religion directly. Like, we're going to have a community, and a lot of us are atheists, but and that's maybe the central thing, but we're not like saying you shouldn't be here if you're not atheist. And Oasis Network, which got started in Houston in 2012, I was surprised. I had thought it was younger than Sunday Assembly, but it's older. Anyway, there's like maybe 12 cities in the United States that have an Oasis, and it's kind of like a Sunday Assembly but different. I'll talk more about Sunday Assembly. And that was founded by a couple of comedians in London in 2013. And it gets called an atheist church because they meet on Sundays. Oasis every Sunday tends to Sunday Assembly once a month. But they tend to have things where like they sing together. Well, Oasis doesn't, but they have some structure. They have a structure that makes people think, that the same. You can go expecting sort of the same sorts of things each week, and I'll talk about what Sunday Assembly does with that. And then on the very churchy, you get like, let's say the Unitarian Universalists. I spent a lot of time with Unitarian Universalists, because, and I can tell some stories about that, but we're going to stick mostly to Sunday Assembly. But, if you've got the right congregation, the right minister, atheists can feel very welcome. But occasionally you do feel kind of othered. Welcome atheists, as opposed to say, like, you're one of us, you're sort of the other, but welcome. Anyway, I get that feeling sometimes, but very much a humanist church, yeah?
I wanted to interject. I lived in Boston one time in the late 80s, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Unitarian Universalists. They kneeled and said the Lord's Prayer.
Oh yeah, well, Unitarian Universalism, as I think, the Unitarians were forked off of Trinitarians. Actually, the oldest Unitarian Universalist congregation in the United States is in Massachusetts, but it was founded in Holland because it came over with the Pilgrims.
Oh, I see.
And they got the church when they split between Trinitarians and Unitarians. They became very kind of philosophical deists, and eventually, whatever. They're non-doctrinal now. And there are probably a lot of Buddhist and Reformed. I don't know those traditions as well. There are probably a lot of, in other traditions, there are congregations that are very non-doctrinal. Unitarians officially are overall non-doctrinal, but yeah, the Universalist side is of that fusion of Unitarian Universalism dates back to people saying, we still believe in the Trinity, but we don't believe in hell. So Universalism is like universal salvation. And there's more stories there. Ask me if you're interested. Anyway, that's kind of the spectrum there. And I guess the question is, are they inclusive of sort of spiritual atheists? And there's a whole conversation about what would be a spiritual atheist. And usually, the minute I started calling myself a spiritual atheist, somebody wrote a paper that made me pissed off at them, and I couldn't call myself a spiritual atheist anymore. Anyway, more stories there. But let's focus on Sunday Assembly. It's a thing. Hopefully my links work going here. I did sign up. Okay, here. There's a CBS presentation. I've gone to the middle. Oops, sound.
Lisa Lang, there she is.
Is that loud enough?
Taking looks at different paths to faith and fellowship here in these United States.
Can you hear?
This morning we've reached a story that are often overlooked, but key part of this conversation. Non-believers. Lisa Lang visits a group hoping to offer a sense of community that's often found in churches,
A little bit of
mosques,
video
and
about
temples,
Sunday
but
Assembly.
for people who don't want to get God
5 minutes.
involved.
You can count on me.
At first impression,
1, 2, 3.
this may look like a typical contemporary Sunday morning church service. The difference is the one I'm attending has music, it has a message, it has fellowship, it just doesn't have God. This is a non-religious gathering in Los Angeles called Sunday Assembly. What does Sunday Assembly mean to you?
It means community.
Sunday Assembly is family for me.
I always have conversations with other friends who are atheists is we never had community, and when I discovered Sunday Assembly, I found that
I'll
community.
like fast
Brian
forward through
Trout,
some of this
Amy
stuff.
Boyle, and Sam Renderos are all leaders within Sunday Assembly's LA chapter. Most here are not affiliated with an organized religion, and they're not alone. Nearly 30% of US adults are now religiously unaffiliated, often defining themselves as atheist, no belief in God, or agnostic, unsure if there's a God.
I reject most supernatural, if not all supernatural ideas. I have need for community and human connection, the stuff that to me matters most.
Renderos says that connection is being formed here at Sunday Assembly. It may be an unconventional gathering, but it employs a very conventional structure.
Having this curiosity and asking your own questions.
We have a TED Talk style talk. We do sing-alongs, tell a personal story. This might be sounding familiar because it has a lot of the same components that a church might, but we don't do religion.
Founded in 2013 by two comedians in the UK, Sunday Assembly was created for those seeking a secular community. It now has around 60 chapters all over the world, including in other US cities like Atlanta, Chapel Hill, and Nashville.
We release a lot of endorphins singing together. It helps unite people. Like the ingredients of a church service are powerful.
Speaking of interesting topics, it's time for our speaker to come and join the stage.
But the members acknowledge their church-like structure may not be for everyone, especially since 1 in 3 US adults report suffering from some sort of religious trauma.
Are there some people for whom that kind of structure might be a turnoff and actually
Absolutely.
triggering?
Yeah, absolutely.
Religion has harmed a lot of people.
We have people that find it triggering, the actual assembly that happens once a month.
Okay, there's a bit more. It's like 5 minutes of this is pretty useful, but show of hands, how many want the rest of the, a couple more minutes of video, and how many want to just keep going?
Keep going.
All right.
But still comes to our game nights and comes to our book clubs, comes to our volunteer events, and are no less a member of the community than the people that come every month to the Sunday Assembly.
And what's wonderful about this is nobody's going to anywhere bad. So there's no hard sell.
Despite most members being atheists, all are welcome here. Yes, even those with faith, which includes Trout. So Ryan, you are not atheist, you are more agnostic.
I like to say I'm an agnostic Episcopalian.
Raised Baptist in Kentucky, Trout left the religion. He says because of its exclusion of women and the queer community.
I like the organized part of it. I know a lot of people run from organized religion, but the organized part of it was such a sell point for me.
He began identifying as agnostic, but at the same time was also called to the ancient rituals found in the Episcopal Church. Now he's trying to bring similar rituals to Sunday Assembly.
We're working on a book of like secular traditions and rituals that we can pass on to people because I think it's important, it's historic, you feel part of something bigger than yourself.
What does my life mean? What matters to me? Why does it matter? Those are questions we all ask, whether we're religious or not. Those are spiritual questions.
I first learned about Sunday Assembly from Varun Soni, the Dean of Religious Life at the University of Southern California. He says spirituality helps give people meaning, but that meaning can also be found in secular spaces.
So for those who claim to be atheists, but take part in rituals, collective rituals, how would you explain that?
Atheists and humanists in the United States are the most religiously literate people, actually, if you look at all the data. They have done their research. And just because you don't believe in God doesn't mean you don't believe in something. And so atheists, humanists, agnostics, I know, many of them have deeply spiritual lives. And in fact, they're animated by the idea that as humans, we can do great work in the world.
That very idea is part of the Sunday Assembly motto.
Live better, help often, and wonder more.
And they say they don't need religion.
Okay, I think that's a good place to stop with their sort of motto.
What was the end of that sentence? They say they don't need religion.
Okay. See, this is not, you're not a captive audience. You can the feedback, and let's back it up a bit.
Tell them to do or be good.
Oh, thank you.
It comes down to where does morality come from? It comes
Animated by the idea
That is part of the Sunday Assembly motto.
Live better.
I mean, mottos are kind of nice things, mantras and stuff. So they're kind of trying to do the spiritual atheist thing, more or less, and that's a difficult thing. It doesn't attract everybody, right? But that seems to be a strong component of the Sunday Assembly, and if for a Santa Cruz Sunday Assembly to succeed, you kind of have to figure out, maybe we do have that aspect and have more spiritual and rituals, or maybe we have less. And so I'm going to get back into my slides. There are more videos internationally. I've got some links here. And I wanted to show like some of the recent topics they've had at Sunday Assembly LA, which I've never been to. I went to the one in East Bay, but the logic of love. And this is also a sort of thing with the Oasis Network. They'll have these sort of TED Talk-like things where they take up a topic kind of more from a scientific or philosophical point of view than, and you could even imagine having like a skeptical talk saying, oh, let's look at something that you might have believed, and let's look at what the evidence says. So they're definitely trying to be evidence-based, but also experience-based, and trying to walk that line of including both how your lives are lived and learning something. And I went to Sunday Assembly East Bay just to be sure, because I hadn't been to one before. So you go through the mantras. They have this, I could call it group karaoke. They actually had live music to go with it, so it wasn't quite like the recorded karaoke, which is very hard for me to, I kind of care about music, because sometimes the music is messed up. I'm like, I can't be part of this. Not really super musical, but I sing a bit and just like, anyway. So they had like 3 group karaoke pop songs at the beginning, middle, and end, and they put the lyrics up there. And but they had some good musicians sort of backing you up. It was okay. Some readings, some personal stories, like people talking about things that happened in their lives. Small group gatherings. I think the small groups thing is key. I mean, they're only meeting once a month, so how would you even keep knowing people if you only see them every month? If you make it every month, because sometimes a thing happens, like I can't be there that Sunday, and Sunday it's 2 months and I don't see anybody. So small group gatherings. Also, if you don't like singing, and there's this other thing that happens in book club, and that keeps you apart. So what are the things that can bring in people who don't all like the regular gatherings? Thoughts and thanks, so people can bring in, I've got something I'm going through, I want to be thankful to this other thing. A potluck after, so things where people can connect. It was a small community, less than 2 dozen, but it was well organized and welcoming, and I saw somebody actually new from my university back in the day. So I want either now or later to have like more discussion, and maybe it's like, we're gonna have lunch soon, people may be getting hungry, or at least, I don't know what the lunch situation is, but, so these are just a bunch of things where I've got like topics and links that if people have questions, we can like dive into these. I've got other slides that only we'll dive into if you care, but this is a general thing. If you were doing music, how would you do music? What works? If you want to have a community that grows and sustains, what are you gonna do about families? When we had secular Santa Cruz and we had our Sunday meetings, people say, hey, do we have things like for families, and we do things with kids, and it's not just talking about things, what are the kids going to do while we're here? Because that was big for us, my then wife and I joining the Unitarians, was there were things to do, sort of inoculation with the least virulent strain, for them to learn about religions. And multivalent, actually, to learn about lots of different religions, but not really investing in the toxic parts. And they had good sexuality education, which it wasn't great sexuality education in Texas. Even in urban areas, it wasn't terrible, but it was much better to have. You can't talk about feelings as much in sexuality education in public schools. It's just a fact. It's not like how you actually care about other people and treat people. Anyway, they do a good job. The topic of spiritual atheists. What's a sustainable rhythm for meetings? Handling misconduct. When I came here, 3 of the organizations I've been active in Houston had changes of leadership because of sexual, and just misfeasance, just bad manager conduct. Like really, various kinds of toxic conduct. Like, oh man, that's depressing. But it happens all the time in religious organizations. What helps deal with that in ways that don't destroy your community? Anyway, that's all I want to dictate myself, but if you want to ask me later, ask me now, tell me also how the timing is going.
What do you mean by the phrase denominational guidance?
So in like Houston Oasis, when I was in it, was just Houston Oasis. They'd started having, I don't think they'd yet, when this thing came up, there was misconduct by the leader, Mike Ouse, or accusations of, and the board handled it, in the view of many of us, badly, and a bunch of us left. There was no larger group to sort of say, oh, this is how you handle issues like that. When Humanists of Houston or First Unitarian Church of Houston, First UU of Houston, when they had leadership issues, there was sort of the American Humanist Association came and said, oh, you've got this problem with your leader, deal with it, and kind of helping or at least nudging the board there to do something about that leader. Or the UU minister who was kind of like misfeasance, not really assault or anything, just bad management. They had a sort of a process to investigate and say, oh, is this guy really a bad minister? And they found reasons why he was dishonest about why he left his previous church settlement. So anyway, if you've got if you have sort of a federal system, you're congregational, you govern yourselves, but there's a larger organization that can help you deal. That's what I'm talking about. So guidance of, this is how you deal with accusations in a way that is fair to the accused person, but also listens to the accusers. Testimony is evidence. People sometimes say, accusations aren't evidence. Well, if somebody really, is willing to affirm, in a legal way, this happened, that's evidence. So anyway, that's what I meant.
So opinions delivered from on high. So opinions delivered from on high.
You mean in what context?
Denominational guidance.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean
it's a pun.
He's kidding.
Okay.
It's just letter.
Yeah. Well, so I think any organization like this needs to be sort of congregationalist in the sense of each congregation, each group makes, they set things up, they decide what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, but it helps to be part of a larger national organization that to be affiliated so that you can get help, you can go to conferences, and when you have a problem, it's not just, maybe you have somebody who can be an outside party to investigate when, do you really believe these accusations? Do you really remove your leader, your founding leader, because of accusations, or not? Anyway.
And having a national organization where other chapters have gone through this before.
Yeah, exactly.
Having that background really helps.
Although it also can be, the UA is good in some ways like that, the Unitarian Universal Association, but they also have, at least in the decade I was most active, they were sort of pushing theistic ministers. Like, you should be talking about God to bring more people in. Please, no.
But was that nationwide or just in Texas?
I think nationwide, because this one sort of theist, this one guy who came and was a temporary minister in Houston had also been a temporary minister in Washington, D.C. And so they were rotating him around to various congregations in transition, and who needed time to think of how they were going to find their next minister, and he was their interim one. And he was very much like, yay, Unitarians, we save Christmas, we save Thanksgiving, and if you're totally atheistic, well, you should remember Christians were here first. Didn't make me feel.
Well, I think that those people don't understand the current modern tradition of UUs and what draws people in.
Well, I mean, I think it is congregational. Some congregations are different, but yeah, definitely First UU Houston is I don't think that went over well, especially with my the mixed Greek Orthodox Jewish families, dear friends. They're like, I mean, they're not super religious, and they definitely don't want to hear that, this particular, group of Christians that somehow they own the church because they were there first.
But by the way, another sort of side point, I recently talked to a friend of mine at the UU's in Redwood City, and they, within the last year or so, have really figured out the formula that is really working well for them and drawing people in, and like, it involves a lot of what you're talking about here, but I also attended the UU's in Aptos. Oh my God, was that boring. It was kind of like, old people.
Oh yeah, but you're during the fellowship, UU Fellowship of Santa Cruz County in Aptos.
Right. It was super boring or whatever, and
yeah, I was not energized by that. I wasn't gonna drive across county for that.
Right, and as far as, by the way, I also have attended a few of the secular or Sunday, whatever, and we met back with John's thing too.
Oh, okay, I didn't remember.
But
yeah,
I was gonna say, we should make sure not to make the mistake of having a meeting place out in the hinterlands like the UU's.
Right, well, it depends on who you're trying to bring in, and it's maybe more welcoming to have something in a central area where you can get by there by transit or bicycling or something. Yeah, the Friends meeting here has is a fairly accessible. It's not like right in town, but you can get there by bicycle. I went there, but it's like, no, I'm not a Quaker. I can't be silent and think about God.
I don't know what this ordinance, the Center for Nonviolence, but this might be a good location right here. Depending upon how they manage their space. But anyway,
there actually is at least one group that does use this sometimes for like a church type service. And I mean, if you go in the other room, it looks like this is clearly was a church at some point.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But yeah. Actually, my question was just like, of all the Sunday assembly things, do they all just rent spaces like this, or is there actually some of them that actually own some kind of building or anything?
I doubt any of them own buildings. Maybe the one in London has been around long enough. I don't know, but
the one in London got the term secular church or atheist church because they bought and met in the church or a former church building.
Yeah, I think one of their videos has a nice, very tall-looking steeple.
If you look at the video that we're watching, it's clear that the interior is a church.
Yeah. So, but the ones I know of, like I think Silicon Valley Sunday Assembly is actually having issues with where they're renting. Their rent's going up. A lot of secular organizations, congregations, anything that's like, it's very hard to get past that level of renting to where you own your own space, and it really is difficult for sustaining a group if you've always got like, where are we going to meet? For secular Santa Cruz, like, well, we're going to meet at a coffee shop, or we're going to meet we just never really had a good space of our own.
Yeah, it seems like you'd have to have even if you're renting, you'd have to have something that's a consistent space that people just know that's where to go.
Yeah.
So I'm really bothered by the word spiritual.
Me too.
First, I don't know what it means. And second is every meaning that I've ever heard goes back to dualism, body, spirit. And you can't believe that if you're an atheist. So how can you be a spiritual atheist?
Maybe if you took more of a yin-yang point of view, that there's dualism is not real, like
then spirit has no meaning.
Well, but think of the yin and yang, that sort of a recognition of dualism, of dual tendencies, but they're not really separate.
So then call yourself a dualist atheist, not spiritual, because spiritual specifically brings in spirit as opposed to physical.
Well, not necessarily. You could say it's a model. It's just a prism. It's a model, a framework of which to analyze and look at things.
You could say
That's
that.
kind of what you're saying.
But the word doesn't mean that.
What,
Well,
So what
okay.
happens is every time
Okay,
someone
sorry.
says.
I think this is a good conversation to have, and we can
Later on.
continue it after.
It's not gonna be perfect. It's wrong, but it doesn't matter, or whatever that you were
Well, this
talking
should
about.
really matter.
So there's something I'm trying to get at here, and for a while, and maybe we can find a better term, but to like not believing in gods or magic, but that there's this think of say science and think of say the part of Buddhism that isn't like reincarnation, but more of philosophical. The philosophical aspects of Buddhism and meditation, is that spiritualism if it's not actually talking? I mean, debate. Yes, but I think as pedants we can be overly. I think I'm also can be a pedant. Can be overly focused on that a word has one meaning, and so I'm looking for is what's the connotation? What's a phrase? So for a while I thought spiritual atheist maybe was a useful term, but there's a friend of mine that wrote a paper with Elaine Howard Eklund, and I keep wanting to give her a hard time about it, but she's a dear friend, so the co-op, anyway, but not. Elaine Eklund is not a dear friend. She surveyed people, got some great data about people who were scientists and sort of thought of themselves as sort of something like a spiritual atheist and were willing to use that term. But then she, in interpreting the data she got for that, which was really interesting data, started talking about how this implied various religious connotations. So the minute somebody says spiritual, then she's going and it means all these things. So the fuzziness of words, and if you use the wrong word, then people are starting to put things in your mouth. And so divorcing spirituality from superstition and religion, maybe spirituality is a bad word to use for that because it's never going to work.